Today we're going to talk about emotional behaviors, chapter 11. What are emotions? Emotions are integrated responses involving physiological arousal, for example, sweating, cognitive appraisal, for example, interpreting a threat, subjective feelings, example, fear, and behavioral expressions, example, fleeing. Kalat, our author, emphasizes emotions as evolved mechanisms for quick decision making in survival context. Emotions arise from brain circuits, the limbic system, cortex, hormones, adrenaline, for example, and genes, serotonin variants, for example. Understanding these explains behaviors and disorders like an anxiety or aggression. The goals explore nature of emotions, attack escape behaviors, happiness and sadness, and emotional functions with neural and evolutionary lenses. Fun fact: Darwin's 1872 work on facial expressions showed anger displays mimic animal threat signals, which is a universal signal across cultures. What emotion have you felt today? What physical signs have you noticed? Have you ever jumped at a loud noise? That's your amygdala at work. So what triggers emotions? Theories and brain mechanisms. Kalat defines emotions as blends of physiological arousal, which is autonomic changes, example, your heart rate spiking when you're scared, cognitive appraisal, interpreting stimuli, looking at a snake and wondering, is that dangerous? Subjective feeling, the conscious experience, where you feel like, I'm terrified, that is a snake, and a behavioral expression, actions like running away from that snake or smiling because it was a fake one. The James Lange theory says that bodily changes precede feelings. So I'm trembling, that means I'm scared. Evidence: the spinal cord injury patients report muted emotions due to less bodily feedback. Critique of that is emotions can arise without bodily input. For example, the amygdala activation to subliminal threats. The facial feedback hypothesis says expressions amplify emotions. For example, holding a pen in your teeth, which mimics smiling, boosts mild happiness. Botox users report less sadness due to paralyzed frown muscles. Modern synthesis says that emotions emerge from limbic cortical interplay. The limbic system, the amygdala, threat detection, hypothalamus, arousal. Your cortex, prefrontal cortex, appraisal, orbitofrontal cortex, reward and punishment. An fMRI shows real-time integration. For example, the amygdala lights up to fearful faces before conscious labeling. Evolutionary role: emotions are quick and dirty heuristics, bypassing slow rational thought for survival. For example, fear triggers flight. Ledoux's dual pathway model, low road, thalamus to amygdala, fast, versus high road, cortex to amygdala, contextual. AI detects micro expressions, brief fear flashes. This confirms universal emotional signals, which supports Darwin's theory. Moving along to what brings on attack and violence behaviorisms. This is the biology of anger, why we lash out. Behaviors intended to harm, physical or verbal, are aggression. Kalat splits this into reactive, impulsive or emotional, versus proactive, planned or goal-directed. The biological influence. Genetics. Twin studies show 40 to 50% heritability for aggression. MAOA gene, the warrior gene, links to impulsivity when paired with environmental stressors, for example, abuse. Hormones. Testosterone is tied to dominance and risk-taking, not direct violence. Castrated rats show reduced aggression. Human data links testosterone to status seeking, for example, competitive sports, not bar fights. Cortisol, low levels predict fearless aggression in psychopathy. Serotonin, low prefrontal serotonin correlates with impulsive aggression, for example, violent offenders. SSRIs, like Prozac, reduce hostility by boosting serotonin. Dopamine, overactive reward circuits, nucleus accumbens, reinforce aggressive wins. Fear versus anxiety. Fear is the response to immediate threats. Example, a bear triggers fight or flight via the sympathetic nervous system, adrenaline and heart rate spike. Anxiety is anticipatory, and it diffuses worry. Example, exam stress. Overlaps fear circuits, but involves more cortex planning. The amygdala, its role is to detect threats via Ledoux's dual pathways. Low road thalamus to amygdala, for example, jumping at a shadow, and high road thalamus to cortex to amygdala, for example, it's just a shadow. Evidence, fMRI shows amygdala activation to subliminal fearful faces. Rat lesions abolish conditioned fear. Example, freezing to shock paired tone. Human case, patient SM who has amygdala damage can't recognize fear in faces, but processes other emotions, showing fear's unique circuit. Emotions are adaptive shortcuts for survival, predating complex cognition. They prioritize rapid responses over logic. The four key functions are survival preparation, which mobilizes resources. An example would be a near-miss accident that triggers heart rate spike for quick swerving. Second function is communication. Facial and vocal signals convey intent. Example, crying elicits help. Mirror neurons let observers feel emotions, which aids group coordination. Third function is motivation. It drives goal-directed behavior. The dopamine in nucleus accumbens reinforces wanting. Example, anticipation of a date motivates grooming. And the fourth function is social bonding. Oxytocin during touch-eye contact fosters trust. For example, a mother and infant bonding. Ventromedial PFC integrates gut feelings in dilemmas. Damage leads to cold utilitarian choices. Example, PFC damaged patients push the man to save 5, ignoring emotional aversion. Disorders, PTSD, overactive amygdala, depression, underactive reward circuits. Alexithymia, insula damage impairs emotional awareness. More recent research shows Emotion AI detects microexpressions. Neurofeedback targets dysregulation. Takeaway, the emotional brain. Emotions integrate body and mind for survival, communication, and bonding. Dysfunctions linked to disorders, for example, PTSD. Clinical applications, anxiety, CBT, DBS target the amygdala. Depression, SSRIs, psychedelics boost reward circuits. Aggression, SSRIs, behavioral therapies address serotonin deficits. Demystifying emotions via biology informs mental health. Collatz, 14th edition, adds 500 plus references, including AI and psychedelic advances. For the future, brain-computer interfaces and real-time fMRI feedback could revolutionize emotion regulation. Neuroscience empowers emotional control.